Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Level-Headed Language Arts. In case you're wondering, this is not a workshop for grammar nerds. It didn't take me long to come to that conclusion as I was doing a little research on the history of language arts education in the United States. I won't burden you with the sorts of concepts I encountered, things like generative and transformational grammar. Suffice it to say that I concluded that somebody somewhere might need to discuss those things, but it wasn't us. However, I do think that we need to have enough understanding of grammar to appreciate the humor in a graphic floating around Facebook, which features Charlie Brown being hugged by Snoopy. The caption reads, "When comforting a grammar Nazi, I always say softly, 'There, there, there.'" So that's my goal for this workshop. In other words, we're going to keep it pretty simple. My name is Janice Price, and I'm one of 4 consultants at Rainbow Resource Center. What does a consultant do? Well, we answer questions about products, about curriculum choices, and pretty much any other kind of question asked by parents or teachers or coworkers. We get some very unusual questions, like, will the Bactrian camel fit into the back of the safari truck and trailer? The answer to this question was very important to one of our customers during a recent Christmas season. We also get some very common questions, like, I'm a new homeschooler and I don't have a clue where to start. Can you help me? I'm pretty sure, though, that we get the highest number of questions in the area of language arts. As one customer put it, I want to know what works best, especially for parents who aren't comfortable with the subject. I need to know what curriculum is suitable for different types of learners. I need to know what is the best age to start language arts. And I need to know how much is too much or not enough. Okay then, these are the types of questions we're going to address. Choosing curriculum is like picking out a car. You have options. Do you want an automatic or manual transmission? Do you want front, rear, or even 4-wheel drive? Do you want a hybrid? Do you want an automatic anything, or maybe everything? You get the idea. It's the same with choosing language arts curriculum. If you were to call me or one of the other consultants and say, I need language arts, it's likely that we would launch into a series of questions to help us understand exactly what you are looking for. It's not surprising if you feel overwhelmed by the curriculum options available to you. So do we, especially in the area of language arts. We talk about the core subjects, and we tend to say language arts, and to some extent we all know what is meant by that. But take a quick look at our website or our catalog, and all of a sudden the waters seem muddier. For instance, we do have language arts, but we also have English. Wait a minute. Aren't language arts and English the same thing? But Rainbow Catalog joins English up with writing, and you get the feeling that they really mean grammar. Reading and literature are also considered part of language arts, aren't they? Or spelling and vocabulary? And what about grammar? And of course, the question that is at the bottom of many, many others, do we really need to diagram sentences? So we are faced with an interesting dilemma. To some extent, we all know what we are talking about when we say language arts. And on the other hand, we aren't sure at all what any one person might mean when he says language arts, or what a curriculum might mean when it calls itself a language arts curriculum. We faced the same problem ourselves as we were trying to put together a chart to sort out our language arts curriculum choices. Unfortunately, the programs just don't fit neatly into categories. We tried that. Nor do they fit neatly into checklists. We tried that too. Finally, we opted for a list, a long list, but nice and simple. Maybe not quite as much information as you would like, but it does sort things out a bit. This list is available on our website. Actually, I'm beginning to think that language arts is best illustrated as a weaving. Weaving is a method of fabric production in which 2 distinct sets of yarns or threads are interlaced at right angles to form a fabric or cloth, or so says Wikipedia. The warp threads are held taut and parallel to each other, typically in a loom. The weft or woof threads are also known as the filling threads. In this analogy, we might think of grammar and spelling and phonics and handwriting as the warp threads. They're the structural parts that hold the weaving together. Then composition and literature and speech would be the filling threads, the parts that give it usefulness and purpose. And to make our analogy complete, vocabulary is like a golden thread worked through the weaving. Style, as in writing style, might be the threads combined in such a way as to make a beautiful or a meaningful pattern. These last two transport a weaving from something useful into something beautiful. To take our weaving analogy just a tad bit further, setting up the loom is probably not the most thrilling part of weaving, but it has to be done. In the same way, the structural parts of our language may seem burdensome or unnecessary, but they're the very parts that give form and substance to our language and allow for all the beauty of communication that we find in great literature. They also allow for the practical skill of being able to communicate clearly and interestingly. So how do we sift through Rainbow's list of language arts products? How do we decide which we use to set up our loom and which we choose to provide the filling threads? My goal in the next few minutes is to give you some definitions and explanations that will help you make wise curriculum choices for you and your family. My goal is not to just give you a fish, to tell you this is the program you must use, but to teach you to fish, to give you some tools so that you can make level-headed choices this time and the next time and the time after that. The phrase language arts, when used as a noun, means the skills, including reading, composition, speech, spelling, and dramatics, that are taught in elementary and secondary schools to give students a thorough proficiency in using the language. In other words, language arts is the art of using language. In terms of curriculum, language arts is an umbrella term for curriculum in the areas of phonics, reading skills and comprehension, literature, grammar, usage, mechanics, writing, spelling, vocabulary, penmanship, and speech. All of these things, separate subjects, some of them, all somehow fit under the canopy of language arts. These are what we refer to as the components of language arts, and they can be overwhelming to think of all at one time. So let's tackle language arts in the same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Since we're looking at language arts as a weaving, let's look at our warp threads first. Phonics are the building blocks of words. Phonics grows into reading skills that mature into comprehension skills, which blossom into literary analysis as we learn to appreciate the writings that have contributed to the great conversation of mankind. I'm not going to say much more about phonics. That would be another workshop for another time. But I will say that many complete phonics programs include coverage of the various language arts. Typically, if you're using a phonics program, such as Horizons Phonics and Reading, in kindergarten or first grade, then you won't really have a need for additional programs in spelling or vocabulary or grammar or handwriting. The next steps after phonics are reading practice, reading skills, and reading comprehension. In the elementary years, these are strengthened by the use of readers along with teacher's guides, like the Elson or Pathway readers, or library books along with study guides like Logos, Veritas, and Memoria Press book guides, or living books coupled with narration and notebooking. In the middle school or upper grades, this would also include exposure to different genres of literature and methods of literary analysis, which is looking at the craft of literature. Reading skills, such as decoding speed and fluency, follow from phonics. Then skills like finding the main idea, determining the sequence of events, and looking for context clues to determine the meaning of words. In terms of reading comprehension, there are different types of questions, fact-based, and those that are thinking or reasoning questions. The first type of question asks students to state facts about what they have read. Who are the main characters? What happens in this story? Where does it take place? When does it take place? In other words, the who, what, when, and where questions. Reasoning questions ask what if. They look at the how and the why. Questions like this cause a student to think beyond the facts and to form opinions and ideas of their own. Reasoning or thinking questions can train students to become thinkers for life. Literary analysis takes reading into another realm, the realm of appreciation for how the author crafts his story, the way she develops her characters, the way she creates suspense or develops the plot, the use of literary devices like personification or foreshadowing. Another aspect of studying literature is experience with and developing an appreciation for different types of literature, for different literary genres such as fiction, nonfiction, biography, poetry. Literary analysis is sometimes introduced in the early elementary years, but it almost always surfaces in middle school and high school literature courses or in book studies like those from Progeny Press or the novel units. Our other warp threads are spelling and handwriting and grammar. Interestingly, spelling is closely related to phonics. In fact, most elementary spelling programs actually serve as a review for phonics as the student learns and internalizes the spelling rules, most of which are variations on the phonics rules. So the bottom line is that you will see some phonics programs that continue as spelling programs, like Spell to Write and Read and the Wise Guide to Spelling, and others that are closely associated with each other from the very beginning, like All About Reading and All About Spelling. There are also standalone spelling programs that serve to reinforce and review the phonics rules. These would be things like Spelling Workout or Sequential Spelling. Handwriting or penmanship is usually included only in the primary grades, and there are a variety of styles from which to choose. Traditional, probably what you were taught, is sometimes referred to as Zahner Bloser. Traditional includes manuscript, sometimes known as ball and stick, and cursive. Modern styles come in several variations, like italic and annealian, and in some of the new cursive first programs, like New American Cursive or Classically Cursive. In general, modern handwriting styles have simpler letter strokes and fewer changes in the letter strokes between manuscript and cursive. In the case of italic, there are no changes at all in the letter strokes between manuscript and cursive. The letters are simply joined. Some methods, like handwriting without tears, are variations of traditional methods. Handwriting without tears eliminates the slant and simplifies the letter strokes, but still retains the general appearance. Decide the style you want and stick with it, if at all possible. It can be confusing for a child to change form after a few years. I tried that with my oldest daughter, and I definitely don't recommend it. As I mentioned earlier, some programs follow a recent trend by teaching cursive rather than manuscript from the very beginning. They do this in order to avoid the problems associated with the transition from manuscript to cursive. Think about your own handwriting. What style do you use? My guess is that your handwriting doesn't resemble anything like the basics you were taught, and that your personality is reflected in your style. Understand that you are teaching your child a discipline, and you want neatness, but pick a style with which your child can be comfortable. Our last warp thread is grammar, or you sometimes see grammar, usage, and mechanics lumped together and all under the heading of grammar. Grammar refers to the building blocks of our language, the parts of speech, the parts of a sentence, and types of sentences. Mechanics refers to punctuation and capitalization. Usage refers to using both grammar and mechanics correctly. We've looked now at all of our warp threads, grammar, phonics, penmanship, and spelling, and we've seen how reading and literature grow out of phonics. Now let's take a look at our other woof threads, the ones that provide the filling in our linguistic weaving.